So good morning. Thanks for being here at 8:30. If you're looking for the quest for knowledge, you're in the right location. We have the bit.ly up there. It's bit.ly. I'll have it on the other slides. All caps KISTI24, capital I for inquiry. I'm Heidi Neltner. I'm a digital learning coach in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. I was a librarian. I'm an adjunct professor at UK for 2 different library courses. And I was an English teacher, high school English teacher.
Good morning. I'm Angie Gentonio. I also teach in the same district as Heidi. I teach high school English, teach an AP seminar class, and then on-level sophomores. And I'm also department chair. And this year I've been experiencing a lot. I've been using AI a lot in my classroom, and Heidi and I decided to kind of get together and put some things together for you guys as teachers, and then what students can also do with AI. So welcome. I'm glad everyone is here this morning.
Okay, so just to get a read on the room, how many people are at the high school level? Okay, do we have any middle school? I know I have at least one. How about elementary? And administrators? No, I have a couple. Yes. Yeah, raise your hands. I see you. Okay. So that's good because I think the content that we're going to go through is primarily geared towards kids that are 13 and up. But I do have a site that we can use if you're working with elementary kids or need something that's a little more structured. All right, so as far as our agenda today, we're going to talk about what generative AI is, when should AI be used as far as policy and guidelines. And then we're going to get into the bulk of the session, which is on inquiry models and the use of AI. We're going to give it a try. We've got some prompts for you guys to try out, and then we're going to talk about our real life experiences with this. So what is generative AI? I suspect that most of you guys probably know by today what generative AI is. If you didn't know by yesterday, there were a lot of AI sessions. I did use Gemini, formerly Google Bard, and I just said, "Hey, what are you?" Um, and it gave me a really nice bulleted definition of what generative AI is. It's a type of artificial intelligence that can create entirely new content like text, images, or music. It works by learning massive amounts of existing data from books, articles, and code. And based on the data, it can then generate new information. You could think of it like it's a student who can memorize lots of facts, but then write them as their own stories or design their own inventions. I always think of generative AI like it's my dad. So my dad takes in a lot of information, but he doesn't always remember everything these days. And so when he's telling a story, I always have to wonder if it's exactly accurate. He sort of like fills in the blanks with things, you know. My 10-year-old does this too. He watches a lot of like YouTube videos for gaming, and he'll be like, "Oh, mom, did you know?" And then he'll give me some outlandish fact, and I'll yell like, "Fact check! Like, give me your source." And that's kind of how AI is. Like, you can only believe it so much as like a grain of salt. You know, you have to really fact check and double check everything when it comes to AI. So just knowing that, we've been diving in to how we can use it. I like to think of AI as my intellectual partner, as somebody like it's a person, that I can collaborate with or get ideas from. Like if I don't have a thought partner in the room with me, I will put it into generative AI to try to come up with ideas for things. We can use it for feedback. We can use it for content creation. A lot of times I will take a gigantic email that I'm getting ready to send and I'll put it into ChatGPT and I say, please revise this for brevity and friendliness because sometimes I'm too direct. So it'll do that for me. And that's what I really like. That's what I really like to use it for. So then we got to think about when should it be used, especially in the classroom. And we have a lot of like just ideas about policy and guidance for that. This graphic is from AI for Education, and it's the anatomy of a good prompt. If you guys are on the website here, I have all of these things. I have links to all of these things here. So you can kind of like follow along even just on the website. Let me skip that. So here are resources for policies. The one that I really like is AI for Education. They do a lot of just graphics that give you a very visual idea of policy. UK also has a really good site. I don't know if anybody's used that. I just found, like saw it last week. Here's the UK site for policy. I don't know if it's gonna load. If you need to look at policies, they have that you should first kind of like explore generative AI, read about it, explore it, and then look at some course policy examples, which they have. So if you're working on writing a course policy, that's a good place to go. And then we also have AP's College Board, and Angie's gonna talk a little bit about that.
So I teach a class called AP Seminar, which is basically an inquiry-based research class where students write research reports, written arguments with scholarly research. And the biggest struggle for students is always coming up with topics and then outlining their information, finding reliable sources, and then being able to understand those. And with the introduction of AI, College Board had to do something really fast and quick, like get something together because kids were using Chat GPT at like astronomical rates to write papers, to do assignments. And so they created what I feel like is a robust framework that helps teachers and students understand when they probably should and could use AI and then what is not acceptable. We're pretty strict with this because the students have to upload their research reports and arguments to a digital platform and it runs it through Turnitin. And we have to attest that students have used AI acceptably and that they've also written their own work and that it's not plagiarized. So there's a lot of different moving parts. What I like about this as an English teacher is that it breaks it down by phase of work. So, for example, the first phase for us is exploring ideas to develop and refine their like ideas about research and what they want to investigate. So we spend a lot of time using ChatGPT to help them think about existing debates on a topic, breaking topics down into reasonable and like research topics. And they don't know a lot. So when they do this, it's like eye opening for them. And it's really helped to have interesting, nuanced research topics that go beyond the typical topics that students want to research when they're in 10th grade. And so what I also like about it is they give the not acceptable use, paragraph about what they can't do when they're exploring their ideas. This goes through every phase of writing and research for them, and it's overwhelming. So what I've started to do is as we get to that phase, let's talk about what's acceptable and not acceptable. And so they kind of are focusing on one phase at a time and not trying to memorize the entire guideline. So it's for AP capstone, which is seminar and research, but a lot of other AP classes in College Board actually do use AI for things like an AP Lang. You could use it. We don't have to submit writings to them for AP Lang, but I like this as a department policy. And so we're kind of, Heidi and I have been talking about what our policy could look like district wide and how we can kind of bring some of these frameworks together to make something our own. But it's really important that you have these discussions in your departments with your administrators, with your DLCs. Like, how are we going to do this? Because kids are using it. We want to make sure they're using it ethically. And we want to make sure we're giving them opportunities to use it in an ethical way. So the frameworks have been clutch. Like, they've been really helpful for us as teachers to help students figure out the best way to use AI.
Yeah, and we really want to like walk students through when it's appropriate and not appropriate, like Angie's saying. So this AI for Education handout does a really good job of like kind of talking to students about when they should use it. Right now, I kind of use the guidance of would you use a friend or would you ask a friend for help with this, and how much help will that friend give you before you're just copying from your friend, right? So I try to put it into like very relatable terms that we've always used. Like, it's okay to talk to your friend about your ideas, but it's not okay to grab your friend's paper and write it like it's your own. So that's kind of how I have been approaching it with students. I think that like with the AP policy, it's really nice to have those not acceptable times and distinguishing when it's acceptable and not acceptable to keep students from getting trapped. Like if you're on TikTok, who knows how long that's gonna be around now. Um, there's been this whole story about this girl out of Georgia who's like a sophomore or junior in college, and she uses Grammarly to write her papers. So she, her professor had a just blanket no AI use policy, and she turned in her paper to turn it in, and it flagged it as AI. And she only used Grammarly. Like, so she went back through and she looked at her draft history and she showed her professor and she appealed it. And they said, nope, Turnitin said it is AI. You are now on academic suspension. So she's fighting it still. Grammarly chimed in. So, I mean, she has all this evidence that it was just like Grammarly, and we've all been using, like, I use Grammarly.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happens with our seminar kids. So the kids sometimes, even if I have Grammarly the free version, but it still offers to change sentence structure for me sometimes. And I told the kids, if you let it do that, it's absolutely going to flag it. And I guess even with her situation, if it was just correcting spelling mistakes or punctuation, and so really having to like walk through that with the kids and make sure that they have either draft back installed on a Google Docs where we can actually see the live recording of them typing things, or even like revision history in Google Docs, keeping track of all of their work and drafts and outlines as proof. Like the burden of proof is on them at that point, to make sure that they didn't use it in an unacceptable way. So Grammarly's been a huge, like I think, kink in all this because all of us use it. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to not use it at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah. So as a course instructor, you really want to think about what you're going to use or what you're going to find acceptable and what you're not going to find acceptable, and like clearly outline that for students, especially as we're getting into all of this. So now we want to talk about how we can use AI just through the inquiry process. There are a couple different inquiry models that we're going to talk about.
So I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the AP seminar program. It's been around for about 7, maybe 8 years, 9 years, maybe. Our school was one of the first to actually pilot this program. I've read for AP seminar for many years. I've taught the class for 5 or 6 years. And what I like about the class is it's centered around what's called Quest, and it's a framework of inquiry that you could use in any class, honestly, that's research based, or that you want to do projects or presentations. And so if you kind of go to that website, I feel like, Heidi, do you have the PDF that walks them through all of these?
Yep.
I can't remember if we put that
I did
in there.
So on the website, it would not embed, so it's right here if you wanted this.
So I was just messing with this yesterday and I was like, oh, my students we're getting ready to find research topics. And part of the problem is they don't understand context of issues and they don't understand the current debate surrounding topics. And so you could literally throw this question with your topic into ChatGPT, and it really helps narrow that down for them and give them other areas to investigate. But I mean, like, this starts at the beginning with questioning and exploring, giving them time to go through their topics and figure out if there's enough out there for them to research, understanding and analyzing arguments, right? Comprehending what others have said, thinking about that conversation that's already started, evaluating multiple perspectives, in particular with scholarly work. And then we can use AI, ChatGPT or Gemini, to ask them to summarize the source for us. They can do that, but they can't use that summary in any of their writing. So they can use it to understand the source. Like, I have no idea what this scholarly journal article about PTSD in wild animals is about, which is one of our sources this year. So they could literally put that in there and say, I need you to summarize this for me. And that's okay, but they just can't use it as their own writing. Synthesizing ideas, transforming ideas with a team, presentations, transmitting things. These are all kind of a circular framework that we use in AP seminar, But honestly, you could use this in any class, any subject area. It's broad enough. An AP seminar, honestly, is not always taught by English teachers. So I think it's a great resource if you're looking to dip your toe in inquiry-based learning. I mean, I know Heidi has some other frameworks to look at as well, but I like how it gives you these questions to give the kids that can help them narrow down their topics of inquiry.
Yeah, so that's a really good handout for inquiry. I have typically used the Big Six for elementary, Super Three for elementary, guided inquiry design for high school. There's also the Stripling model is very like well known around the country. So I'm not going to play the video, but if you wanted to see a video on guided inquiry design, I have one here. Guided inquiry design basically runs through the same things that we see with the quest model, except it adds some stuff in here in the beginning. So in the guided inquiry design, you have the open and immerse phases. If you do PBL, open is like the entry event. It's where you get introduced to the topic, and it sort of includes this like psychological like thing where you can be like, okay, this is making me nervous, I'm upset about it, like what's my plan going to be, and it just addresses like the psychological component a little bit of the inquiry process. And then you have the immerse phase where you're just starting to like try to figure out what all is available for the research, what all you could dive into. And you explore by doing cursory explorations. You might watch a video about it. You might like listen to a podcast. You might read a bunch of articles. And then you identify your more targeted research question and generate those research questions. So there's these three things that happen kind of naturally as we get exposed to an inquiry question. And then we gather and create and share and evaluate. So I like this model just because it addresses sort of the human side of that inquiry process. So this whole process of inquiry relies very heavily on an inquiry community and providing feedback from peers and instructors. And AI can be part of that community. I'm teaching a course at UK right now where we're doing guided inquiry, and it's remote. So it's really hard to create an inquiry community when you're like asynchronous or whatever. So we're using AI right now to help us sort of generate some like feedback and ideas to help us dig a little bit deeper into that process. So I like to use AI as the partner on that. So we are actually going to try this. If you guys go to the website, if you're not already there, it's the bit.ly, all caps KISTI 24 capital I inquiry. Do I need to pull that back up? Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you're there? Sorry. Okay, so on the page, I have two templates that you could steal for whatever. I have a Google Doc version of the inquiry process, and then I have a Google Slides version that you can force copy for that. If you grab the Google Slides, because some people prefer slides because it looks more like a notebook, and some people prefer just to scroll all the way through. To use this, you just press use template. It will copy that to your Google Drive. And then I set it up kind of like a Slides Mania template, where if you click the down arrow to add slides, it adds the different like slide templates so that you could add as many of the like gather slides as you need, or you could add as many of the immerse slides as you need or whatever. But you have your choice between one or the other. These are great for using with students. It builds in formative assessment. You can see I have the outline built out on the side so that you can jump to different spots, and then it will tell them to stop and conference for formative assessment pieces, just to like have an idea of, you know, where we're at in the inquiry process. So what we're going to do is you could use one of these to fill in, and you don't have to. I didn't know if somebody would want to like try it and get some practice with one of the templates. But what we're going to do is we're going to choose one of the tools. Up here we'll probably model a couple, because chat gpt sounds very academic and Gemini sounds like you're talking to your friend. So it's nice to get kind of both. Claude does a couple of different things, like it lets you upload PDFs and things like that, so it's got another sort of benefit. School AI, has anybody heard of School AI? This is more for if you have like kids who need a lot of direction, or if you need if you have elementary kids. This first link here is a prompt that I set up, like a workspace that you could work in. What it does is it lets you put in your name and then you talk to the generative AI like it's in the room with you, like a person, and it helps prompt you through the inquiry process. So it would definitely be good for maybe a special needs child, somebody who needs a little extra support, or this would be good for, like I said, the younger students. So we're going to pick a tool and we're going to try the inquiry process. So um, when you create a prompt, you always want to set the scene, like tell them who you are. You want to be very specific in what you need. You want to tell them, like, use simple language, and you want to give it like a structure for your output. So the structure for the output might be a bulleted list, a table. It could be a paragraph. It could be a story. It could be a summary. Like whatever kind of form you want to see the information is what you have to put into your prompt. So we wrote like just a sample prompt. I'm a 10th grade AP seminar student. Provide me a list of 10 research topics related to homelessness in the United States.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in previous years, I would be like, yeah, homelessness, great topic. But in AP seminar, they have to be very targeted and narrow, and they have to find a topic within this larger topic about homelessness. And this is where AI is 1,000 times better than Google searching. It is amazing the things that they can find that they had no idea about. And so this really helps them narrow down their inquiry, and getting away from these kind of huge topics that really, like, you can't capture the entire problem of homelessness in the United States in a 1,200 word research report or even a 2,000 word argument. So we really focus on narrowing it down, and ChatGPT, Gemini, it's been a lifesaver for me and them. So it's really eye-opening when you start playing around with this and things I didn't even know about. So hopefully you find some interesting stuff as you kind of practice through this.
Yep. So our ask for you is that you either take this prompt and put it right in, or that you change the underlying part. So maybe you've got something coming up, like a unit of study coming up, and you want to try that. Like just change that out. Or if you're teaching a different grade, change that. Like you might even use the same end part and change it to like fifth graders or sixth graders. And we want to see what these things tell us. So what I've done on the website is under this section for tools to try, I have a Google form to collect some of these responses. So what you would do is just choose which one you used, ChatGPT, Claude AI, or Gemini, type in your prompt, and then copy and paste your results into that for us. And we're going to compare what it does, because we want to see if it's going to give us all the same ideas or if it's going to give us something different, right? And it may depend on like if you've used it before, if you've set parameters in ChatGPT. There's a lot of variables that could play into this. So I'll just model for you guys what we would do. Should I use ChatGPT or Gemini? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So here I am on ChatGPT, and I'm just going to type the prompt that we had. So. Okay. So I'm using, I'm going to say that I'm a seminar student. So I'm an AP seminar student in 10th grade. And what was the prompt? I don't even know the prompt. And
Provide me with research topics about homelessness in the United States.
Okay, and I'm gonna give it some additional parameters we did in that other prompt. Provide me with, I'll say 10 research topics, and I'm gonna say in a table about homelessness in the United States. So I set my parameter, I set my grade level, I said who I was, and I just told like this basic scenario. Okay, so here are my 10 topics. Oh, I never thought of COVID-19. I don't think that's come.
Yeah.
COVID-19, impact of COVID-19. There we go. I haven't seen that one yet. We've tried this a couple times. So,
I know, it's crazy.
yeah. So I'm just going to grab that.
One more thing, Heidi, before
Yeah.
you go off this website. So what I often have the kids do is copy and paste one of these things, like maybe homelessness among LGBTQ plus youth, type that into the chat GPT box and narrow it down even more. We could even add some terminology about lenses and perspectives, which is what we use in AP Sem. But this gives them a start. And it's interesting to see how like the other AIs, what the research topics they come up with. I've done this multiple times in ChatGPT and I always get something new, like the COVID one. So it's interesting.
And I wonder like if it was a sixth grader, if it would give it the same thing. So like, if you guys take a second, let's just try this. I'm going to just put it into the form. So I'm going to say ChatGPT. I did do it as a table, which was probably a mistake. So I'm going to just say reformat that as a bulleted list.
And you can copy and paste. They have like a button you can use to make sure it like copies right, I guess, when you put it in the form.
So I'm going to copy and I'm going to come back over to, I don't know what I was on, my results, and pop that in. And then I'll submit that. Let's see if I have to make it go out there. Submit. And then that should show up here on the list. Cool. Thanks. Okay, so you can kind of see like here we have 9th grade science, looking for ideas for real world scenarios to teach about, I can't even say that word, macromolecules. Yeah, so there's some ideas. Okay. All right, and then let's try the same prompt in Gemini. It looks like some folks tried, a lot of people just go straight to ChatGPT. I feel like that's kind of like the Coke of generative AI world. So if I go back up here and I'm going to click on Gemini. Did you do a Gemini one?
What I like about Gemini is that it'll give you articles sometimes and videos embedded in the whatever they give back to you. It's really cool. And like you can use both chat and Gemini together to create some things.
Yes. Okay, so yeah.
I don't know about Gemini.
Gemini, I'm not sure. It seems like it's pulling from more.
I will tell you, yesterday I asked it a question and it told me that it couldn't answer that question, but ChatGPT was able to. I can't remember what that was about, but it was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
But again, I think Gemini's still in beta, right?
Yeah. So Gemini is like, it was Google Bard. And we were thinking we were going to be able to use it with 13 and up. It looked like we were going to be able to, but it's because it's still in beta form. It's not available in the Google Education platform. So we can't turn that on yet. So when they used it the other day, the kids had to log in with their personal Google accounts, which, we probably wouldn't always say you should do. So maybe don't listen to that part. Anyway, that's what we had to do to get around that.
Do what?
Oh, for Microsoft?
Oh,
I'm not sure about that one either. I
yeah.
don't use that one very often. Claude is 13 and up, and it seems like it's pulling from about the same grouping as ChatGPT. I'm not
So
getting anything. I'm like usually not getting anything after 2021 on any of
Yeah.
those. It's just like a different tone
yeah.
that it gives. Each of them give. They have a different personality.
Go back to that Gemini yield because I feel like so in this case it's giving them potential research questions, which is kind of blurring the lines for us in AP Sem. But if you have English regular on-level students who struggle with writing research questions, this is very helpful for them, and you can even have them reword these or paraphrase them in their own words so that they can have a guide, but also like not feel like they're completely left on their own developing a research question, which can be hard for on-level English students in 9th and 10th grade.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so when we come back here to let me pull this back up. Sorry. Back to the guided inquiry template. So I'm looking back at the template. Now the template throughout sort of gives some generative AI prompts that you can use. So the first one was list 5 key issues that impact whatever the topic is. So if I scroll down, when we're looking for sources, you're not gonna when you're looking to explore sources, you're not gonna really ask ChatGPT 3 or Gemini or whatever to give you sources necessarily, because that's not what that's for. It's for generating ideas, not for giving you sources to use. But what you can ask it for is to help you brainstorm ways to search for that topic, which is really hard for kids. I mean, as a librarian, Boolean searching is even hard for me. But if you really want to get good sources, you have to request good information. So what I might do then is I might come back to my topics and just pick one and ChatGPT. So maybe I'm going to look up homelessness and substance abuse, or solutions to chronic homelessness. Let's use that. So that's going to be the topic that I'm picking from my list to sort of start exploring in more detail. And so I'm going to ask ChatGPT, give me 5 different ways to search for solutions to chronic homelessness. Okay, now it I didn't ask a good thing. It just missed my prompt. So I have to revise my prompt. So I didn't put Boolean searches. So
That would
I'm
still
gonna
be good. I mean, you could still use that for students to if they're not sure about different ways to break down that topic of chronic homelessness, but she's right, it didn't really do what we wanted it to do. And that happens a lot, I feel like.
So I have to be very specific using Boolean search terms. Okay, so it's giving me different ways. Like I would have never thought to call it long-term homelessness instead of chronic homelessness. So I could pull something from there. Let's see, solutions or interventions. I might not have thought to use the word intervention. Supportive services. I might not have thought of supportive services, wraparound services. Like that's going to give me much more in-depth searching, especially if I'm using a database. And the database is an article is using only housing first. That might really give me something important. So if you're using databases with your students, going through this step can really generate some good ideas.
I plan on doing this time around because I'm sure we all know students really struggle with searching. I can't find anything, right? And they type in their entire research question. It's not what you should do. So they struggle with that, and it's a waste of time. It's not effective use of time if they don't do some of these things. They don't need to spend 2 or 3 weeks in AP seminar researching. They can get these tools from ChatGPT or Gemini to help them with their search phrases. That's so useful for them, and it can spend more time actually drafting their argument instead of spending weeks doing that and then pulling their hair out, getting frustrated. So I think that's going to be clutch for us. I think it's going to be really helpful to use ChatGPT in that way for source searching.
For like initial resource gathering before the kids go in deep, when they're just looking to see if a source is going to help them answer or like address their topic. One thing that you could do that gets into a little bit of gray area, maybe with AP Sem, is you could say like they could copy and paste articles in and it's say like generate a 50-word or generate a 100-word summary for me about what this is about to help them quickly determine if it's going to be useful or not useful. It could get into the gray area because if they go back and use that summary in their research, then they're not quoting properly or paraphrasing properly or things like that. So that can be a little gray. That might be a strategy I would use with teachers. Like I was just reading a research study from, I was telling everybody this morning, I was reading a research study that came out of Columbia about reading in print versus digital, and it was like written by the people. So it's this like 40-page thing, and it was talking about brain waves and all the stuff that it's not in my common vocabulary. So I did take sections of that and put it into ChatGPT and ask it to explain it to me like I was 12. And it was a lot easier to access. So that's just like maybe a teacher strategy that you could use for this part. Okay, and then we get into the identify where we do want to like try to think about like research questions. Now in AP Sem, they can't use it to generate research questions. I don't see why we couldn't use it in social studies, science, your regular on-level English class to generate English or to generate questions. Do you want to comment on that or?
Yeah, I mean, like if you have databases at your school, you might have the SIRS database, and it has questions made with articles attached to it. So that's one area that I direct my on level or even collab special ed students to. But I feel like I said before, if you can give students at least an anchor for a research question, it kind of it focuses them, and then you can scaffold and kind of break away from that, and eventually they write their own research questions. But modeling is huge, especially for kids that don't do a lot of research, like in on-level English classes. With AP Sem, they're not supposed to use anything that's generated for them, which if this pops up on accident, like they have to like kind of ignore that, which is sometimes difficult for them. But we do have a framework that we work with in AP Sem about how to structure a research question. So they could use some of these ideas within that framework, I guess, but it typically does need to be their own work.
Mm-hmm. So if you were going to use this for like support, like generating supporting questions in social studies or compelling questions, you could use it for those kinds of things. So here I just put generate 10 research questions about solutions to chronic homelessness. And I'll take that and also put it into ChatGPT. I hope you guys are trying it because it's kind of cool just to watch these things come out. Okay, so the way Gemini is doing it is it's bolding the sort of subtopic and then giving me questions with it. So for example, housing first versus treatment first. Which approach is more effective in ending chronic homelessness, providing housing first with wraparound services or requiring treatment compliance before housing placement? That's something. Okay, so if I go over to ChatGPT and enter that same prompt, it's giving me more streamlined just questions. So like number 7, what are the long-term outcomes and cost effectiveness of different interventions for addressing chronic homelessness, such as permanent supportive housing versus emergency shelters? So that's one way that students could start generating questions. On the guided inquiry piece, I would have them start by generating their own questions and then put it into ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude AI to get more and combine those two processes to generate a question. Once the students have a question, they can ask feedback. So this is like when I was teaching English, when I was teaching research for elementary students, even the hardest part was generating a good research question to get all the like like to get to a good paper. You have to ask a good question to get good answers, right? So I would always sit for hours and give kids feedback on just the questions. Well, now they can take that question. So if I choose one of those, like maybe I'm going to use this one. I'll put this one in Chat GPT. So I'm taking from Gemini and I'm going to Chat GPT, and I'm going to say, analyze the quality of the question Okay, and it gives me some feedback based on specificity, relevance, clarity, feasibility, and potential for actionable insights. So it's giving me some really good feedback. The other thing I could say is, how might you improve the question? Okay, it's kind of, this time it's kind of giving me the same thing. In the past, when I've put that kind of prompt in, sometimes it like gives me a different question, or it'll tell me how I can expand it. So it just kind of depends, and you might have to flip between the two different sites, or three different sites like Gemini and Claude AI, to just see what the different things are. So I like getting feedback on those sorts of things. Again, and in a class like AP Sem, I'm not going to do that, right?
I mean, honestly, if they write their own question and they throw the question into ChatGPT, that would be like getting feedback from me or a student. So, like,
Okay.
in that respect, that would be great. I feel like that would be helpful. They could also put in our specific framework to the ChatGPT. Like, is this a good research question based on these 5 like components or something? That could be really helpful and useful. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So we've covered like helping you narrow down focus, helping you brainstorm topics, helping you brainstorm questions, helping you, like if you're gathering information, helping you develop those Boolean searches to get better information, especially from databases. So then we move into the outlining. And this is where, like, in a couple of these different spots, I specifically put, do not use generative AI for this. So like up here, when they are writing their summary, so in this particular like note-taking activity, they have to copy and paste from the source and then write it in their own words. And I say, do not use generative AI here. So telling them when not to use it and giving them permission when to use it is really important to model. So when we get down to outlining, once everything has been gathered, I did say, do not use generative AI to generate your outline, because they should be using all of their sources to generate their outline. I am, however, going to cheat right now and create an outline in one, and then I'm going to ask it for feedback on the other. So I'm just going to pop into ChatGPT and ask it to create an outline real quick. Okay, so I put, create an outline for research questions. What strategies can be used to encourage landlords to participate in programs that house chronically homeless individuals? I have no idea what it's going to say for this. It's like, it's better than I could have done in 30 seconds.
But I mean, imagine this for like special ed students who struggle with processing and struggle with writing. I mean, this is huge. I mean, to give them a place to go into research, I think has a place in that type of classroom, obviously.
Yeah. If I had a student with exceptional needs that was struggling to organize their thoughts, I might say, like, what are your 3 main points? You're going to say, like, help me write an outline for these 3 main points, or something like that, to give them a little more structure. But I would probably ask them to identify their main points first, right? Because they've done the research and they've read some stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to take this outline, and I'm just, like I said, I'm cheating. I'm going to put it into Gemini, and then I'm going to say, give me some feedback on the following outline for the question. Oh, shoot. I shouldn't have. So I always put the question in Okay, and then I'm gonna copy and paste that outline. So this is a little unusual that I'm having AI give AI feedback, but oh no, it says bad response. I hope it might not work. I might have broken it. Okay. I think, yeah, I think we're almost done here. Okay, that might not go. Let me try going back to ChatGPT and just ask it. Let's see. Oh, it thinks it did a good job. So in another time when I practiced this at home, it told me like, hey, you don't have a thesis statement. And I would suggest putting in your topic sentences and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that's such good, that's such good advice. That would have saved me so much time. So, you know, I think just like playing around with that is helpful. I may have too much stuff in here. Let's see. Let's see if it does it this time. Nope. Oh, okay. So Gemini breaks it down by strengths and needs for improvement. So it's a little more it feels more conversational than what I got out of ChatGPT. Yep. So we're down to about 4 minutes. So we just kind of wanted one of the last things to do was just talk about our experience using this with students. Do you want to?
So I have been experimenting with AI in the classroom, making it create things for me to give to students. And one thing I've been focusing on in English too is vocabulary. And we have a pretty good vocabulary workbook, but I asked ChatGPT to make me a quiz. I said, here are my 10 words, and can you make me a story or a paragraph where they have to fill in the appropriate word, and it gives you some really funny, it's like Mad Libs, but it saves so much time. Like I didn't have to make that paragraph and think about the things I wanted to put in there. So I use it to help generate multiple choice questions, quick kind of formative feedback, checkpoints. I have mostly used it with AP7 for them to find topics. But I mean, like Heidi was saying about emails, I had it help me write letters of recommendation. And it was glorious. Like I wrote the letter, but then like she said, I had chat kind of clean it up for me, and it saved a lot of time. You know, I think there are obviously numerous ways that you as a teacher can use this to create content. My focus right now is helping students use it. So I feel like we've had a pretty good experiences in AP I think the struggle might be on level classes and getting them to understand acceptable versus not acceptable.
Yep. And I'm using it with a course I'm teaching in for library science this semester. And we have gone through guided inquiry, and they've done those prompts like what I have up here. And the thing that I noticed about that is their questions were much better quicker, because I would have to give them feedback on their questions like through writing, but they were getting it right away before it even got to me, which was wonderful. The other thing that I noticed was a lot of times we'll do like for the inquiry community part, I put it into a discussion, and they have to post their question, and then they have to give each other feedback on the questions. And in the past, they would just say things like, oh, your question's really good, or oh, I'm really interested to see blah, blah, blah. And this time I had them put one student's question into ChatGPT or Gemini and ask it for feedback. And then I told them when they go in the next time to give a second student feedback, they have to model their own feedback off of how Gemini or how ChatGPT gave feedback. And their feedback was 10,000 times better than I've ever seen. So just having that model for what good feedback could look like enhanced even my graduate level students' experiences. And then they were able to take all that feedback from ChatGPT, from their classmates, and create really compelling questions. Like, and these are people who are interested in library science, you know, so they could already write a mean question. So it was exciting for me to see how modeling good feedback improved our whole experience as an inquiry community. So it's like kind of the big stuff. I don't know if
Just encourage, like I know in this room we are all probably embracing AI, but I know in my school there are some people that are adamantly against it, and I feel like having these conversations in your departments with your staff, like showing them the benefits and how this can really help students, and start to embrace these things because they're not going away. And it's our job to teach them ethical use of these things, to become better learners and critical thinkers, and not to use it to cheat and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you want to think about that, obviously mitigating unethical use. Just some things to think about with that. You want to make sure you have clear guidelines that the kids know. And basically, I quizzed my kids over the AP framework. I said, study this, let's make visuals of it. And then they took a quiz. So I made sure they understood it, using draft back and then revision history to prove their work. And then having check-ins periodically with kids. Show me your work. What have you been doing? How have you used ChatGPT? That's not all you could do, but it's a good start if you're trying to mitigate that unethical use.
Yeah, and those templates would help you with those checkpoints. So use them. And if you use them and you think of a way to make them better, let me know, because we love it. All right. Thanks for coming.
You guys